Welcome to sunny side of San Diego.
It's the greatest city in the history of mankind. It's a fact.
Two local San Diegans that look at obstacles as an opportunity for growth.
If you don't fail, you're not even trying.
Michael Carini is the Acrylic Alchemist.
You can call me CEO
of Carini Arts. And Vicente, Vinnie, Enriquez.
No one could do it better.
The team lead of the Enriquez group.
Ride with us.
You sunny San Diego listeners. My name is Vinnie, and my co-host over here,
Carini.
So this episode, we kind of want to talk about the idea of mediocrity, fitting in. I think it's just the idea of kind of being forced to fit in, right? You're with a group, and you sometimes don't want to jump above them because you feel like you're leaving them behind and things like that. So. We've talked about this in the past, and I've talked to other entrepreneurs, business owners, artists, and that's the one thing is as they're growing, sometimes they have to learn to leave some of the people they left behind, because if they stay with the same group of people, they're going to pull them down, or they can't pull them down.
Yeah, I mean, on the flip side, if you move to another level, you could always pull them up. I think mediocrity is an interesting thing because I think a lot of people think that they want to be great, but they choose to stay in a place of mediocrity where they're in the middle, where they're not really seen. They're not bad, but they're not good, because when you step into either one of those realms of really bad or really good at something, you have more eyes on you. And so I think a lot of people want to fit in, and a lot of people will choose to fit in over being successful at things that they could be successful at.
Yeah, I think it's tough, and this is something that we've probably just talked about a lot, is the idea that sometimes we don't feel like we're worth it, right? I mean, I know, and I think we've talked about this in the past, but so we both went to high school together in San Diego, and I know when I left here, I went to college up in the Bay Area, and then I lived in Europe, came back, but the one thing I noticed when I came back into town, I saw some people that were doing the same stuff that I left, that they were doing. The 5 years I was gone, and you start looking at, you're like, if I was here, I really feel like maybe that inner self would have been like, well, I can just keep doing the same stuff I'm doing and just enjoy the moment, enjoy it, and not really progress, not really grow. Right. So, yeah.
I think it's easy to fall into that pattern and routine. And I think that's what happens a lot of times. Maybe people do have a big ambition, a big dream, but they start getting comfortable. They start doing something. And they say, well, hey, this isn't really what I wanted to do, but I think I could get a decent apartment for this. Maybe someday buy a house, support a family once I reach my 401k and my benefits. But I think what we learned in this past year is that all of that can be stripped away. Even that illusion of security can fade away. And I think that it is a humbling reminder that we need to wake up and perhaps go after our dreams.
Well, there's always that line, right, of basically living in the moment and living for the future. Right. There's that line that we always kind of chitter on, kind of like figuring out, well, should I go this way, this way? I had fantastic times when I was in my early 20s. Enjoying life, partying it up, going out for drinks, hanging out with friends, and really having those fun moments. And yeah, the next day I'd probably have a little bit of a headache, but it was a great time, enjoyable time. Right. And I look at it like I could have probably put those moments onto the next moments, the next days, yet I forced myself to leave and basically learn that I'm in a different environment. How can I adapt to this environment? How can I grow from this environment? Right. So I think you have to kind of push yourself out of those pockets if you're easily accessible. Easily swayed by living for the moment. That makes sense?
Yeah, it does. I've always been somewhat comfortable being an outlier, or at least I say I am. Maybe on a subconscious level, maybe I'm not, because there have definitely been times in life where I will change things, even my reactions, thoughts in a conversation, because I like somebody and I want them to like me back. So I want to fit in. So I change and gauge my behavior based off of what I think that they'll like. And I think that sometimes we get too concerned about what people will like and wanting to be able to relate and connect with people. So in an effort to avoid a disconnect, we cap ourselves and we stay in a certain place. And we've talked about fear of success and fear of failure before, how those are things that kind of push us back towards the middle. But yeah, I think a lot of people want to be in the middle because it gives them a place to hide, to not be judged, to not be in the spotlight. If you step out on that ledge, if you do anything bold, it gives people the opportunity to judge you. So by staying in that mediocre place, we think that we can avoid judgment. The truth is, though, is we're still going to be judged. So we might as well move into that place where we can help others grow, where we can provide a platform to welcome other people to, hey, step out here with me. Maybe not with what I'm doing, but step out on this ledge, take your chance, take the leap.
You know, there's in the business world, right? If there's this idea of this messy middle, right? So the toughest part is not necessarily having a big company, it's having that small company, right? Small business, right? When you have a big company and you know kind of, oh, right, if I bring on another admin person, it'll allow me to do X more business, X more files, right? If I bring on another salesperson, they're going to basically grow my business about this much, right? But when you're wearing multiple hats in your business, right, and you don't have that that item that you can just say, okay, well, if I spend $10 more in this, or $20 more in this, $200 in this, $500, $5,000, whatever in it, right, and get that return off it, it can be difficult, especially too if you haven't hired the right people yet, right? When you're talking about business, so that jump from medium to big size company is probably one of the more difficult things instead of actually maintaining a big company. At least that's what I hear from a lot of owners of big companies. So if you're in that kind of like middling ground and you're being affected by it, where you're just like, oh my gosh, man, I can't get through this. I need to fight through. You know, it's realize that once you get through that wall right there, it probably is going to get a little bit easier. Now, it's not going to get drastically easier, but it's going to probably get a little bit easier.
Now, me personally, and I've said this before over the course of the years, nothing angers me more than the thought of being mediocre. It's why I'm so intense in all that I do in working out, in my goals and my dreams. I figure, hey, if I'm willing to put in the work and do the time that other people aren't, I can jump ahead. I can get ahead. I can move to the next level. And going back to what you were saying, there was a long time that I wanted to be a big business. I thought that I was going to have a gallery and that I was going to have a bunch of people working under me. And I started doing art fairs, art events. It cost me a lot to do them. It was some of them $5,000 a booth, $10,000 a booth. There was one event I think I spent like $15,000 just for booth space. And I figured, hey, if I'm going to take a gamble, I'm going to take a gamble on myself. And I think you absolutely should. And I think that the big business is a good thing for some people. It's the right path for some. What I found was that in delegating things to other people, because of my desire to control things and perhaps micromanage, I just felt like things weren't sufficiently done or done to my satisfaction. I thought, well, I feel like I'm having to go back and still do the thing that I'm paying somebody else for. So maybe I need to reevaluate this. And I realized that the thing that was going to help me getting out of mediocrity was to shift my perception of the business, to recognize that it was okay to be a small, successful business as opposed to a big business, because it was more connected to me. It was more personable. I was more invested heart and soul when it was much closer to the heart. And so now I'm somewhat of a small business, and I want to be a small business, but I'm a small business that operates with minimal overhead, which gives me the flexibility to take bigger leaps and bigger chances. So I think it can mean different things, what that success is, but the desire to not be mediocre is still very much one of the fires that keeps me going.
You know what? While you're saying that, because I have that fire too. And I've had to almost like hold it down a little bit, because it's if you let that fire burn too hot, sometimes you'll forget the people around you.
Yeah.
You just focus on work, and so trying to adapt, you know, the mindset, but also adapt it in a world that allows me to build relationships and build growth, at least the way that I basically look at fire in my business. I think because I've always had that idea, that fire, man. I mean, there's been times where I would come from when I lived in Temecula, and I would come down to San Diego to go to work, right, for real estate. And I didn't get it. I mean, I did it for maybe like 2 months like that. But to beat traffic, sometimes I would just come down really early and then crash on my floor in my office for a couple hours and then get to work about 6 o'clock so that people, I could get there, be the first one to kind of get the work going. But it allowed me to kind of save a little time on the drive down. And so I was just like, I have to be the first one in there. I have to be the first one to leave. I have to basically get this business, close this business. I have to make this, go forward. And so I think when you're talking about the idea that fire to be there, I think that's why it gets me so angry sometimes when I see people that are lying on social media, that aren't doing the business, that aren't basically doing the transaction, but they make other people that maybe aren't at our level, that are just getting going, feel bad.
Yeah, I agree. I admit, though, I have a lot to go on my level, and I have the same problem. And one thing that you mentioned that I really liked and connected with was the idea of allowing the fire to consume you, because I do get so wrapped up in it that sometimes I forget to actually live and enjoy life. And when I look back, I'm thinking, well, if I was to die today, what was the purpose of this? Yes, I was a grinder. Yes, I was a hustler, and that's good. But what was I grinding and hustling for? So I have to remember why I'm doing it, so that I'm constantly fighting between intensity and balance, and I'm trying to find the right place because I don't want to be mediocre. And going to something else that you said, I sometimes have that issue in my relationship where my girlfriend likes to relax. She likes to have fun. She likes to enjoy life. She's always in the moment. And it stirs something up in me where she's not doing anything wrong, but it stirs something up in me because I think, hey, what if I start to relax and I start to lose my focus and I start to not go after it? And so it gets this agitation going in me, this fire that can become an intensity that could be damaging to the relationship. And so I have to be conscious of that. And it's something I'm thinking a lot about right now, but it's also opening me up to the other side of it where I'm thinking, okay, well, what are we working for? You have the opportunity for happiness and love right here. And that's something that you said you've always been working for. So it's forcing me to dive deeper into the questions. I definitely have been very clear that I do not want to ever be mediocre. I still want to rise to the top, but maybe I have to rethink about how I rise to the top. And there's times that you can have that intensity, but I'm having to learn to try to be soft at times too. And it's very difficult for me because for me, once I turn on that switch, it's so hard for me to turn it off. But I am also terrified of turning it off because I think that once you turn it off, it's even harder to get it back on. And I don't ever want to lose that.
Yeah, I think it's really allowing yourself to adapt that fire into a kind of a safe way. That's why I look in my business all the time is like, how can I incorporate basically my life with my significant other, and incorporate the fire in it. Like, how can I do that? Because you have one life to live. You have one life to live, and you want to enjoy the moment. You want to build that happiness, and you don't want to be mediocre, right? So it's finding that balance, like, of how you can do that.
And when you've been doing it on your own for a long time and you've really gotten into that mode, it takes quite a bit of work to create that space to move back into a place where you can have those other things.
Yeah.
I don't think that thing's ever going to go away for me, though, that desire to be better, bigger, faster, stronger, smarter, to grow the business, to be a better artist. It's always going to be within me. And it creates a certain type of pressure, too, that I personally start to get down on myself because I start to think, hey, are my best years behind me? Did I already have the golden years? Am I moving in past my prime in regards to my career and the things that I do? And it starts to hurt a little bit. But at the same time, that could be the thing that fuels you. I think that can be a tool that you use, but the idea that, hey, maybe I moved past it, like for me, that wakes me up and it makes me think, hey, no, we have to get back to where we were, and not only where we were, but we can actually get better. And so I find myself kind of slipping back right now And I'm having to think about these things and have the dialogue, but I'm going to have to take action soon. I'm going to have to actually start doing some of these things to get into that place, because I do feel like I've lost a step lately, and I feel like I need to get back there. And I feel like I'm not complete until I do. So that's definitely something that I think is just in some people. I think that you can build it, but for me, it's just something that I've always had there it's an itch that I have to scratch.
Yeah. Well, now that you have a partner, you can have them scratch that itch. I'm joking. So thank you guys for listening. I mean, what are you going through? What are you afraid of? I mean, I think, mediocrity is definitely a fear that I think me and Michael have. I know for myself, I think about that a lot, and finding, okay, well, if I were to die today, what would I be? Who would I be? When I pass away, and it's understanding. Okay, well, you can't live in the moment that you're going to die every single day. Yet at least understanding that it's possible, and assessing if you're on the right road to where you want to be. So please subscribe, please share, and if there's something that you're afraid of, something you're scared of, feel free to reach out, comment. Yeah, Michael?
One thing I constantly think about that brings me back to that space, I think of the idea that hell is when you die and meet the person you could have been. And so if you think about that, if you think about reaching that moment and you're presented with who you could have been and you didn't reach that, how are you going to feel about that? All the things you could have done that you didn't do. And that's the drive for me sometimes.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys again for listening. Please subscribe, please share, and of course, tell your friends. Thank you.